I figured while I got the D5 here on the table with the top off of it, I wanted to revert back to the video I just posted about replacing the LED display in this that I did here on the front. I just wanted to add that if anybody even attempts to get one of these in there like I did, just because it's a cool thing to do, when you go to scrape that black coating off the back of the polycarbonate on the bezel in order to fit in a different display, when you do that, you want to get that black coating off of there without messing up that polycarbonate as much as possible. That's why I started with an X-Acto knife running, I guess you would say, parallel over top to try to scrape it off without tearing up the polycarbonate. The reason being is the more you tear it up, the harder it's going to be to buff it out. And I'm not an expert on buffing. I've never even tried to do that before. So I ended up getting the polycarbonate a little hogged up and said there's no way this is going to fly because it's going to lose clarity looking through the lens at these lights. So I got to get that buffed out. So I used a Dremel, buffed it up, and actually it didn't buff it that much. It just more or less smoothed it out. And I thought, oh my, this is going to be horrible. When I put them LEDs in there, you're going to be able to see that haziness right through the display. And I was wrong. You can't really tell. So I just wanted to add that. I was actually hoping I could find a way to put some chemical on there to eat it off, but I thought, no, you're asking for a train wreck. So I chose to kind of scrape and grind it off. So I just wanted to add that. But anyway, I'm going to go a different direction here. I want to show you the most incredible thing you can do to a D5 or a D7 if you've got a crazy amount of determination. And that is making a drop-on board for the tone board. That's pretty clear. So here's your tone board, and Sansui did such a beautiful job on this for many reasons. But going over the schematic like I had for many years on this thing, looking at it, it was readily evident to me that there was a differential pair formed by two transistors that was nothing more than an op-amp. And I thought, what happens if we just take that differential pair out and put an honest-to-goodness real op-amp in there? And let's just see what happens. So what I did was I got the schematic out, started going through, Xing out all the components that needed to come out. And this should be complete. I don't think this is missing anything. So I ended up pulling Q2. Looks like there was a jumper. Q3, C14, which I know from right off the top of my head. C14 was high pass roll off on their op amp. Q3, Q4, looks like R20s, Q4, and this was actually from the D7 conversion, but it's exactly the same on the D5. So what I did was I pulled all those parts off the tone board here. And then I had to determine where all the new tie points would have to be. So I came up with a template that looking at it here, doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense to me how I did this. This is the first time this has ever happened to me. Immediately, I almost always know within a couple seconds, but I'm a bit sketchy on this. So what I did was pull all those components, figure out where the tie points had to be, lay this piece of plastic down on top of the tone board, and then plot all these points through on the template. And just looking at this, I know there's a big ground path setting on the top of the tone board. So the way I design stuff is I would have set the op amp directly on top of that ground path, because that's the way I do things. So the op amp would have been set in here. I would have looked at all the other tie points around the perimeter of this and started saying, okay, well, if I have to get this capacitor to that tie point or this, where am I going to have to place it on this template? And then after I got that all laid out onto the board, that's how it turned out. This is not some of my best work. I'm not extremely proud of it, because this double-sided plated through hole board is absolute junk. Don't ever try to use it for anything, because you're going to short everything out and be very upset. With that being said, so I took Sansui's power connections off of the tone board here, which are, I think, 31 volts. Set two 12-volt regulators here for my supply line, and plopped the most fantastic op amp, the lme49860, right down here on top of the ground path that would be sitting under it here on the tone board, and made marks on my new board where all the pins had to come up through. So the pins were soldered down onto the tone board, and then when you set the top board down on, the pins will come straight up through it, which takes a great deal of time to get everything lined up. Unfortunately, I didn't have any nice fancy gold-plated pins, so I just had to use some heavy leads. So I brought leads up through. When you do this, you have to be careful, because as soon as you solder to this, if it's not laid good enough on the tone board on top of it, when you heat this up to solder these tiny little wires on, you're going to unsolder it down there. So what I had to do was, instead of making straight pins to go straight down on top where they would have a little surface area of soldering, I made 90-degree pins so that they would have a large surface area of solder, so the likelihood of heating this pin up and desoldering something underneath that you can't possibly see that you just desoldered is pretty much impossible to do. Oh my. And Sansui also used one single transistor as an emitter follower to drive the input of their active filter, which was a very bad idea. So I thought, oh my, what am I going to do? I got to get that transistor out of there, that buffer transistor. So I used an op2134. They are a horrible op amp in a lot of aspects, depending upon where you use them and how you use them. But if you put them, what I found is if you put them in the beginning of the amp, coming off the balance control, in the very high impedance part of the circuit, and then feed them into an op amp that's not a JFET op amp, things sound very beautiful. But if you were to put two JFET op amps in here, I can't even imagine what you're going to get out of it, because this 2134 has the most incredible presence. It actually, in my opinion, has way too much presence. So that brings me to the front presence control. which works absolutely beautiful. If you turn it up too much, it's going to be absolutely insane. It was for me. So you may have to leave it flat or cut it back depending upon how spacious you like music. Me personally, I don't like stuff that's real spacious. And that was what I immediately noticed and went through with the op2134. So my audio lines come in over here and feed into it. There's two coupling caps. They go into the 2134, which is a buffer, a gain of 1, and then they come over and hit the 49860 LME, which has a gain of 10, and then they just drop right back down into the tone board and go through all the existing traces. I don't know if I missed anything or not. So this is something that can be done. I've done it on 2 amps, and it's the most incredible sounding thing. And I just wanted to share it. Hope that somebody enjoyed this, seeing what I did with this. And if you have any comments, please leave a comment for me. I'd appreciate it so much. Thank you for watching.